I'm pretty fired up this morning. I don't know about you, but I'm fired up for multiple reasons this morning. The first reason is because we get to come here as a family, and we get to worship the one true living God. We get to come here as a family, we get to worship the God that changes lives. The second reason I'm excited is because I get to fulfill a childhood dream. That childhood dream goes back to when I'm sitting in the youth group section in Columbia, Tennessee, and I'm watching my preacher speak to our congregation. I can't help but wonder, what would it be like to use one of those earpieces with the microphone? I get to fulfill that dream this morning. Thanks to Tracy for letting me borrow this. To get started, I'm going to mention one goal for you. I'm going to set one goal for everybody in here. So forget whatever you're thinking about. Forget about fantasy football. Forget about lunch, what plans you have for lunch. I'm going to mention one goal for you. That goal is for when you walk out of these doors after service, I want you to have your head held high, and I want you to feel confident knowing that you can face whatever situation that life has to throw at you. I want you to leave with the confidence of Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? It's a great thing to know that God has our back. It should give you confidence to pursue anything, to deal with any situation that you're facing. This morning, our topic is going to be finding God in the midst of the storm. And yes, that is a play on words for the hurricanes and the different things that we've seen throughout this last few weeks and throughout the hurricane season. The reason I was asked to speak this morning was to share some of my experiences through the National Guard and through us being deployed during Hurricane Irma. So I'm going to attempt to apply the situations that I've learned and the experiences and some of the stories that I've seen to this topic and to your own personal lives. So if you could, just think about your own personal life for a second. Think about whatever situation you're going through. Finding God in the midst of the storm. Some of you may say, I came here this morning and, I'm rock bottom right now. I really don't know what to do. And I may have came here today without any answers. I think a lot of us have been there. You may be on the other side of the spectrum and say, well, I just come out of the storm. I'm kind of going uphill right now, which is meaning in a good thing. So you're on the rebound, if you will, from a life disaster or a tough situation. Some of you may be in the middle, which is probably some of the younger ones in here. You don't really have any real life experiences that have been, tried you to your core. The unfortunate part about this world is it's not a matter of if the storm comes, it's a matter of when the next storm comes. So we're going to look at the main verse today, Nahum chapter 1, verse 7. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in Him. My unit is based out of Tampa Bay, and our mission was supporting operations at local shelters throughout Avon Park in Sebring, Florida. So basically what our task was to provide security and safety to all those who are in the shelters. On the left, that's me and a couple of my team. We had 5 of us at this one shelter, which was in Avon Park. It was at the Boys and Girls Club. The picture on the right is a convoy, and that's just a picture of our convoy at Sebring. So this is a picture inside the shelter. As you can see, mattresses are everywhere, blown up mattresses. There's some tents in the back left corner. Everyone just kind of came to the shelter and staked out a piece of real estate, and that's all you had. There was a family, which I'll talk about here in a second. 15 people. You had 3 sisters, grandmother, grandfather, 8 kids. They've staked out an area as wide as 3 blankets. It was unreal. So we go here. We're going to be there for 48 hours. When you talk about finding God in the midst of the storm, you're talking about drawing positives from something negative. You're talking about your personal situation, whatever storm you thought of that you've gone through in your life. How do you draw positives from that? Las Vegas? How do you draw positives from 9/11? Well, going back here to Hurricane Irma, how do we draw positives from that? When I look at the hurricane, the relationships formed stands out to me. And I know that everybody in here can think of people who came to help board up houses for those who couldn't do it. We personally were helped out by someone, by a whole group of people coming to board up our house while I was gone. and clean up our yard. So that might be what you're thinking about in this situation. For me, I'm going to talk about some of the relationships we form. As you can see, some of the kids asked us on the Saturday night we got there, hey, can y'all play basketball? And so if you know me at all, I'm going to try to make it happen, because I love basketball. And so you can see that picture there, which one of the mothers took, and they sent it to me. But I just enjoyed playing. And the thing about the basketball games, it goes so much further. If you look at the picture on the left, you can see the couples standing in the grass watching. What it did was it established credibility for us, not just as enforcing rules and regulations to these kids, but it said, hey, we want to take a personal interest in your life. We want to take a vested interest in you, and we want to have a relationship. So doing this was so good for the remainder of two days, because it helped establish credibility with the kids. It also helped them burn off some energy before we were locked up for 30 hours. If you can go to the next slide for me now. So the next family I'm going to talk about, you'll see the picture on the left here in a second. There's a lady that has, the family I mentioned, that has 15 in their family. So I walk over here, right when I get into the shelter, this is them on the left. The lady sitting in the wheelchair in the front. I walk over, and I say, hello, my name is Jason, what's your name? And her mother answers, her name is Adriana, but she can't speak. And so I continue talking and just say, well, I'm glad to be able to meet you all, and if there's anything I can do, let me know. And Adriana is just looking at me in the eyes, and I can't. It's amazing.
Yes.
Right on, brother. That situation is possible with God. Going to the right. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but it happens. So, Adriana smiled as big as you can imagine. It just says so much with her smile. And I'm sure you can think of somebody in your life that has done that for you when you need it. So you go to the picture on the right, we have all sorts of kids there. We have Bryce, Andrea, Ashley, Jennifer, Antonio, Alfonso. This is a 48-hour weekend, and you're learning everybody in there. Because it's so close, and it's, you're stuck in the situation together. It's a tough situation. I'm sure your family has probably gone through a tough situation and came out stronger. And that's the same principle here. So this is just a couple of us. You see the tall guy on the right. That's Sergeant McGee. Me and him roll together wherever we go in any National Guard situation. So he's kind of my right-hand man. He's my muscle, if you will, as well. So he makes a situation like that a lot easier. But so going back to Adriana, she's sitting there. She can't speak, but she has so much joy. She has no idea of the uncertainty of the hurricane, but she's there and she's smiling. So that's really what I wanted to touch on with her, and the amount of love that family showed throughout the whole weekend is amazing. And that kind of thing is possible because of God's love. The boy on the right, this is my buddy. Whenever I got there, so I'm going around to meet Adriana's family over here. I go to the back corner. I go, hey, my name is Jason, what's your name? He just stands there and looks at me, sizing me up. So his mom says, go ahead and talk to him. And he's just looking at me. And I feel like I'm meeting Suzanne's dad for the first time again. And he's an 8-year-old boy. So at that point I knew this is going to be a tough nut to crack. But I'm pretty resilient when it comes to that. So my goal was to, I said, I'm going to make this boy smile at some point this weekend. His name is Laquan. And the next day, I see Laquan over in the corner. His family situation, the family real estate over there, they staked out. And he's playing cards by himself. And I knew, I was like, I'm about to play some Hot Wheels with this kid. So I go over to Laquan, I say, hey, can I play with you? And he says, yes, kind of hesitantly. 10 seconds later, we're best friends. We're racing these things, going off ramps, arranging them by color, all sorts of stuff. I played with him for 45 minutes, and then I resumed my duties and responsibilities. The next day, I had no idea the impact that I made on that kid. The next day, his mom comes up to me and says, I just want to let you know the impact that you made on Laquan. He couldn't stop talking about you all night, and he kept wanting to know where you were during the hurricane. He wanted to make sure that you were safe. And it made me feel good. Like, I appreciate Laquan having my back and wanting to look out for me.
Amen.
Well, she said not only did it touch me as his mother, but it touched everybody else who was in that corner and saw you do it. And, it just goes back to God's love. I didn't intend for any of that to happen. God can take those little situations that we do, small acts of kindness, and blow them up. He can do the small thing that you did to somebody else, and nobody else knows, and you just did it as a small act of kindness. God can reward so many people in that situation and encourage them. So her telling me that encouraged me again to continue doing what I was doing, which I thought was pretty normal. The last story that I want to talk about is the lady on the left. Her name is Abuela, which is grandmother in Spanish, right? That's how she introduced herself, and that's all I call her, because that's all she introduced herself as. So Abuela, and then her two grandkids, which is Kathy and Karina, you see in the middle. She came to me on Monday night. After the shelters had closed, we just kind of consolidated into 3 major shelters. So these are the people who couldn't go back to their house. So you already know when they come to the shelter Monday night, something bad has happened, or they don't have power. So I go out to the parking lot to help her bring her stuff in, and I say, how did everything go? And she just starts crying. And in that situation, I just try to be there for her. Sometimes the most you can say is nothing at all in the situation. I made it my personal mission at that point to make sure that she was taken care of as best possible while she was in the shelter. As well as the 3 others you see with me, Specialist Schaefer and Sergeant Ayala. We all kind of took them in under our wings for the weekend. Well, this is the Monday through Wednesday, so it'd actually be Monday through Wednesday. But as you see on the right, the 2 girls, Kathy and Karina, they wanted to play Yahtzee and Go Fish all the time. I think I played 5 hours worth of those games in a 24-hour span. But they were amazing. They asked us for our 3 phone numbers, so we wrote our phone numbers on their hand. They're from Tampa, so they're going to let us know when they have a gymnastics meet, that kind of thing. This came from Hurricane Irma, where they're seeking appropriate shelter. And by the way, I haven't told you why Paula was crying yet. Her roof blew off her house, and everything inside flooded. You see her in this picture right here. Her quote before, so we're showing Kathy and Karina, we're letting them get in the vehicles. We're kind of letting them honk the horns and all that kind of stuff, and they're having the time of their lives. And Abuela says this: Monday I would have never thought anything positive could come from this, but now I can see how something good actually came from something so terrible. She just had the roof blown off her house and everything flooded inside. Can you imagine losing everything that you had? Except for the small stuff that you brought to the shelter with you. And she said, I never knew something good could come from something so terrible. In your situation now, we're going to jump and get a little personal. So whatever situation you think of, maybe you haven't talked to your son or daughter in a few years because of an argument. Maybe you don't have the relationship with your spouse. You can't communicate on the same level of deepness that you would like. Maybe you're trying to choose which college to go to. And that's going to shape the rest of your lives. These moments define us, and these moments shape us. Some of us are known solely by the stuff we've overcome. If you're introducing somebody else, you introduce them, and they walk off and say, hey, that person dealt with this, and they overcame it. It's like, that defines them now. Do you have that moment, or can you think of somebody that does? What are the things we need to know when the storm happens? The first thing we know when you're going through a tough situation is God is present. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 39. Know therefore today, lay it to your heart that the Lord is God in heaven, above, and on the earth beneath. There is no other. God is there whether you know it or not, whether you feel it, whether you feel Him or not in your situation. You think you're isolated. God is present. That's the first thing that we want to note. That's the first thing in your outline as well. God is present. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1 through 3. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flames shall not consume you. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. That's talking to you. When you pass through the waters, they're not going to overwhelm you because God has your back. And when you leave here, that's the goal, right? No, you can face any situation because God has your back. The next thing, God is our refuge. Refuge is used 76 times in the Bible. It means shelter or mighty rock. You can see the correlation here with finding God in the midst of the storm and those seeking shelter. Are you seeking shelter when the storm's coming your way? Or are you just saying that you're seeking shelter? One of the things in your outline, I believe, is next. God should be our first priority, not our last resort. When something bad happens to you, do you call your family or friends disheartened and let them know? Do you start making a checklist of how can I make this better? How can I make this better? Or do you turn to God and say, hey, I need some direction right here? You can't sit on your hands, but what you can do is you can ask for guidance. And I'm not just talking about say a prayer. I'm talking about repeatedly say a prayer. Pray without ceasing. You have to meditate. You have to want it. You have to seek God as your refuge. Look at the similarity between these three verses. Psalms 46, verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. Psalm 9:9, the Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in the times of trouble. Nahum 1, verse 7, our main text, the Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in Him. I think there's a recurring theme here, right? We have to seek God as our refuge, but we can't just wait and make it our last resort, our last measure. We have to seek Him first. Suzanne, I knew that I wouldn't get away with preaching on Sunday without bringing Beckham up here for something.
Hey.
Alright, so you look back on here, he went through Hurricane Irma too, didn't he? He went through Hurricane Irma, but he didn't have a choice. He didn't have a choice of what to do. He didn't have a choice to board up the windows. He was going wherever we were going, right?
Yes.
He escaped to Tennessee with Suzanne. And, this is the difference. You have a choice. You're an adult. God gave you free will to choose Him. When you have a storm coming, when you have Hurricane Irma coming your way, are you seeking God, or are you making the choice to put Him as the last resort? What's going to help us in doing this? It's easy to say, okay, seek God as your refuge. But what does that actually mean? I'm going to list a couple things to help us out. We have to have a strong foundation. We all know the BBS song, The Wise Man Built His House on the Rock. We probably sing that to Beckham at least once every 2 days. He loves it. But the wise man built his house on a rock, Matthew chapter 7. Wise man built his house on a rock, foolish man built his house on the sand. We know what happens. The waves come, and the one who built his house on the rock, Jesus Christ, is left standing. You can't go into a storm and expect to withstand the storm if you haven't prepared. So, if you are not in the time of the storm, are you doing something to prepare yourself for it? Are you building a foundation that's going to be strong? I use this analogy. I debate on using this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I use this analogy with you quite often. You say, well, when I get into a situation in high school, you had to make a decision before you got to that party what you were going to do. Because when you get to that party, or when you get to that trial or that storm, it's a lot harder to use rational decision-making skills when everybody's around you. There's a lot of other variables being tossed here and there. You have to make a decision before of what you're going to do in that situation. Same thing comes when a storm comes, you have to be prepared. Next thing is you have to look for them. And this is going to be the last point that I want to make with this. When you're talking about something so negative, Las Vegas, 9/11, we can name racism in society today. You can name so many things, and you can take the negatives from it and just harp on it all day long, which you see our media kind of do. But if you're looking for the negatives, guess what? You're going to find it every time. So you have to actually look for God in situations. If you're on the fringe of your job being, you don't know whether you're going to have a job next week. If you're trying to fix your marriage, how can God be in these situations? Well, we've established God as present. You have to actually look for God sometimes. He's not He's going to always be there. But if you have your back turned, you're not going to see him. So you have to be willing to look for God. Psalm 63:1, God, you are my God. I eagerly seek you. I thirst for you. My body faints for you. In a land that is dry, desolate, without water. Do you do that? Can we honestly say that we seek God in that way? Or do we go home and watch Netflix and practice all these other things that are meaningless in the long run? Do we fill our days with stuff, with idols, modern idols? Or are we seeking Him, or are we seeking a strong foundation? Are we trying to build that foundation? So some of you may have drawn the correlation at this point with the National Guard side of things and the Christian side of things. I was given a task. I was given a mission by the state of Florida, and I was expected to help others find refuge. When I got up in the morning, Friday morning, my unit is composed of all different races, all different ages, all different backgrounds. But we were given one mission, and we were expected to complete the mission. As Christians, we're made up of all different races and all different ages in here. When you clothe yourself with Christ, you put on that uniform, you're given one mission. You're given a mission, and you're expected to help others find refuge. Something that you have. You know that you can seek refuge in God. Are you helping others find that? And I'm going to close on this. If I was in that situation, I'm taking an oath and told to serve and protect, but I'm having a bad day. My team lost, and I just don't want to talk to anybody. You know, I'm going through one of those rough patches, and I don't want to talk to anybody about it. Does that give me the opportunity to forego my responsibilities to serve and protect in that situation? I think all of us can agree, no. It's more evident with law enforcement officers. If you call the police, and all of a sudden he says, hey, this officer's having a bad day right now, so he can't really respond, but we're going to have somebody there as soon as possible. I don't think that would really fly for most of us. And this is going to hurt a little bit to hear, and hopefully that's the case and that provokes action. But if you are having a bad day, that does not give you the right to forego your Christian responsibilities of the mission. And your Christian responsibilities are to help others find refuge. So I can't say, hey, I'm having a bad day, so I cannot act like a Christian. You have to give God your word so you can adequately reflect Him to people who do not have Him. This is the last story from my National Guard experience there. This is in the gym. Sunday evening when Hurricane Irma was rolling through, a lady goes to her tent, she brings out the songbook, and she gets a group of people and she starts singing. They start singing hymns. They start singing for an hour. This is the audio from that. This is what I was able to gather. My soul, my Savior, God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior, God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. It's a little different when we sing it here and when you're singing it not knowing if your house is going to stand. Amen. You know, these people are singing it in the midst of true adversity. They're singing it just like in Acts 16:25, if any of y'all want to look at that reference. They're singing in the midst of turmoil, not knowing if their house is going to be. These people have sought shelter for a reason. They did not have adequate shelter. They're now in appropriate shelter, and they're choosing to worship God instead of worry about what's going to happen. This morning, I initially started by saying, if you can walk out those doors with your head held high, knowing that God has your back, that's our goal. And I hope something that was said today through one of the scriptures, Nahum chapter 1, verse 7, that you can do that, and that you can walk out of here knowing that you can face any situation. Because let's be honest, we're all going through something. Everybody in here is going through something. Are you seeking God as your refuge? Some of you in here may not be seeking God. Some of you may not know how to seek God. If we can offer you assistance in any way, please come while we stand and sing.